In this video, I would like to demonstrate how we can check the values in these two text boxes, make sure they are valid numbers greater than 0, give the user error messages if they are not valid numbers greater than 0, perform the calculations, write the value to the page, and then clear out all the values. I am doing this using two separate if statements rather than one joined if-else if. The beauty in doing that is we can see multiple error messages at once. Because each if is independent of each other, they will execute if they return true. When you're working with one if-else if, only one clause will execute at one time. So here's my form. Here's my text box for the tax rate, my placeholder for the error message, my text box for the cost of purchase, my placeholder for the error message. I have two buttons. The first button will calculate the tax. The second button will clear the values. Here is my placeholder where I will output what the tax will cost. So in my window.onload section, I am accessing the first button using the onClick event, and when that button is clicked on, I will call this function calculate tax. I access my second button using the onClick event so that when that button is clicked on, it will call this function. Here is the function to clear out all values that is called with the second button. I clear out the results and the error messages by setting the inner HTML property to an empty string. I clear out the two text boxes by setting the value property to the empty string also. In the calculate function, I am using two separate ifs to check the values. If the values are not correct, then I will give the user an error message. So I first check the tax rate. If it is not a valid number, or if it is less than or equal to 0, I give the user the error message. So if this condition returns true, the code will execute. However, regardless of whether this condition is true or not, the second if will also be read. The second if will check that the cost purchase is a valid number and that it is not greater than or equal to 0. So if there is a problem, this will return true and the code inside the curly braces will execute. Now, we need some type of flag to determine when to write the values to the page. All this is doing is checking the number and giving an error message. It is not controlling whether or not to write the values to the page. Therefore, we set a variable to test. This is a Boolean variable. And we are starting out saying everything is okay. Is okay equals true. This is a very common approach used in programming to set a value and test whether it's true or not. If there's a problem, we set that value to false. So our first if looks for an error. If there's an error, it will return true. It will give the user an error message. At that point, we set our isOK variable to false. If there is not a problem, that's fine. Then in that case, isOK is still true. In our next if there is a problem, it will return true. We give the user an error message, and we set our isOK variable to false. Now we have a third if. This third if will determine when to write the results to the page. It will only write the results to the page if isOK equals true. I don't really need to write isOK equals true in here because it's a Boolean value. And this expression, if isOK, means doesn't return true. Remember, if the if returns true, then the code inside the curly braces is executed. The only way that isOK will return true is if it has not been set to false. So if there's a problem, it will be set to false. If not, or once the errors are fixed, then it will go back to true because every time we click on the button, we call this function. So this function is being called over and over again until the user gets it right. So here we see we have two simultaneous error messages. If I fix the second one and I click the button, this error message will disappear because every time we click this button, we are executing two separate ifs. And the if will only return true when there's a problem and we are clearing out our error messages. Now if I go back in, there we go. Our third if has executed because isValid is true. We write the results to the page and I can call the second button and clear out the values. So this is a very commonly used approach in programming to set this true-false variable as a flag, and then we use that to determine when to do something.